Welcome back, everybody, to another live stream here on the O'Shea Duke Jackson channel. I am your host, O'Shea Duke Jackson, and today, do we have a very unique and different show from a different perspective. You guys know that, in particular, I do like a lot of Black male interviews, a lot of Black community issues, and this is somewhat a Black community issue. But today, we're talking to one of our good friends and moderators who's been very faithful to this particular content and channel. And that is none other than, you guys know him, Junk Powell Video. He's a moderator on my channel. And he's been an inspiration to me in more ways than you might want to think about. But let me introduce him and introduce him to yourself also. Go ahead, Junk Powell Video. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you for having me, O'Shea. Thank you, everybody, for coming in, and for all the rest. Get the likes up.
Get the likes up. Now, Junk Powell Video, man, you're very unique in this particular sector of what is known as the Black manosphere. And why would you say that you are unique?
One, how many white dudes do you actually ever telling you that they grew up in the Black community? Even for the ones that have, other than me, and don't say that, who else have you ever heard who actually will admit, and there's nothing wrong with growing up in the Black community or the white community. Who have you heard that's white that said, I grew up in the Black community, and not try to be the quote unquote so-called what is perceived to be Black, especially in this day and age? So I would say that's what makes me unique among a lot of other whites out there.
Let me ask this. So when you say about so obviously you are Caucasian, right? And that makes you very unique in this sector because people know you in this small sector, this and some people could say very racist sector of Black YouTube, but you fit in quite well. Talk to us a little bit about how you grew up, if you would, because I know you grew up in a Black community, but can you be more a little bit specific about what kind of community you grew up in as to what you were seeing as you were growing up here?
Well, you know, there's a lot of facets to that, but basically, when I actually did live a couple times within a white community for short months of my time span, you know, like 9 and 10 years old, I didn't see much difference. However, my peers were mostly either Hispanic or Black, growing up in Santa Ana, Orange County, next to LA County, between LA and San Diego. And a lot of what I see is a lot of what's being talked about in the Black manosphere, you know, the dysfunctions, the successes, the ratchetness of a lot of Black women, but ratchetness does not necessarily or at all mean women. It also pertains to men. I grew up in that atmosphere of the good and the bad and the ugly, just among it all. So what I have seen is a lot of inspirations within the Black community. I've seen a lot of people, especially like fathers in the 70s, in the 80s, that would raise their families and do things that a lot of white people don't have any experience or saying that Black people are capable of, which is not true. I've witnessed it myself. I have been disciplined by both older Black men and women that my dad has basically given permission to, because I used to be out of hand when I was a kid. Basically, I would blame that on my father because he wasn't married for one, and he wasn't home that often. So I would go out and try to find things to do, which got me into trouble. So within my community, I did have sort of a community that looked over me. And at the same time, my father and I would move a lot up to Oregon for a couple months, then move back to California for a year or two, then up to Oregon. And basically, my dad was a house painter. He had his own business. You can't paint houses in the rain up in Oregon. That's why we kept going back to California. But we always kept going back to Santa Ana, or if we moved to Anaheim, it wasn't the best part of Anaheim, then back to Santa Ana. If it was in Tustin, it was back to Santa Ana. That's basically roughly how I can explain it. But basically all the topics that you're bringing up here, O'Shea, with all your interviews and everything, this is what I've experienced. Mm-hmm. Do I agree with everything that a lot of people agree on doing within the Black community or the white community? No. And then, yes, there's things I do agree with, but that comes down to what is right and what is wrong. Now, there was a time when I was younger, before the age of 17, that before I really knew what the difference between right and wrong really was to its fullest extent, I used to go with the narrative, basically, if it's black, it's right. Not if it's white, it's right. If it's black, it's right. So I had to, as a person, as a man, growing up, I had to realize that at one point in my life, when I was 17, I said, you know what, if I ever went to jail, and it doesn't matter who it is, nobody who is my friend would really come and see me in jail. So therefore, that's when my life really started to change. My attitude started to change. When I started caring more about myself instead of just other people, I started to grow up, and I grew up really fast. So.
Let me ask you this, and guys, if you're coming in, do me a favor and like the video, and I definitely appreciate it. If you want to subscribe to the Junk Pile video, go into the description, and we'll be basically promoting his channel. Now, I mean, here's the thing: you're very unique in the case that most white men in America find themselves with, white women or Asian women, but how did you start dating black women? I mean, just specifically, has that always been the case, or?
No, it hasn't always been the case, and I have to bring that up to my upbringing. My dad was a small part of it. Looking at magazines, my dad used to have on the coffee table, which he shouldn't have had, the Playboys, the Penthouses. Even when you're in a grocery store and you walk past the magazine aisle and you see nothing but white women on the covers, it doesn't matter what the magazine is. And TV in a nonchalant way would say that, white women are the creme de la creme. They are the only ones who possess beauty. They're the only ones that possess intelligence in a woman. They're the only ones that dress nice. They're the only ones that treat you nice. And so I went with that narrative because that's what I was taught in society. But as I got older, real quick, I found out that's not the case. And I would have to say exclusively, it was probably around 15. But basically, it's not because I didn't have like certain white women who didn't like me or anything like that. It's just that for some reason, I don't know where it came from, I just basically decided to go only with black women because they're, I don't know, darker women are more attractive in my eyes. And but I did notice at 12 years old, and I have no idea what, why, but black women seem to, or black girls my age and a little bit older, would always try to grab on me, say things to me, that they're interested in me in certain types of ways. And, as a young guy, that's a little overwhelming, but then it kind of grows on you. You know what I mean? But yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask you this: was white girls doing the same? Will they give you the same treatment?
They did when I went to certain places in Oregon for some reason, kind of like my dad took us to a place called Springfield, Oregon, which is kind of hick, right?
Yeah.
And I remember a group of white girls that are like interested in me probably because I was from California. I dressed different, I walked different, talked different. And a group of them kind of got me away from another group of girls and then picked me up in the air actually and tried to strip me right there.
Damn.
And not the playground, because this was high school. We're talking like the football field, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've had little different experiences. Nothing like that really in California, but yeah.
So okay, so you grew up kind of around some black people, dated some white girls. It seems like a little bit initially, then you got attracted to black women. Okay, I can understand this, but how do you get to going to or wanting the need to go to Africa? And then this is going to kind of lead into how you're getting other black people as a white man to want to visit Africa and spreading the news about Africa in a sincere fashion. How did you get to know about Africa and wanting to go there?
Well, basically, I think I told you this before. I had my last chance American girlfriend for 8.5 years that I proposed to a few times, gave her a couple wedding rings. She lost them. She had
whoa, she lost them.
She lost them. She
black chick?
Yeah.
African American or like
Yep.
Okay. She lost how many rings?
2.
How much they cost?
Oh, they weren't much. So I'm glad I didn't lose much, but they weren't much. The simple fact is, she lost them, but that wasn't the biggest thing. The biggest thing was she would say things to me like, "If I was you, I wouldn't want to marry me. I don't see how you can be in love with me, and I think you're only in love with the idea of marriage and not really wanting to marry me." Saying things like that. She had a rough life growing up.
Mhm.
She did have some abuse from a stepfather, at least one that she told me about in her past. And she had trouble of trusting people, like giving out information, like opening up. So, but after 8.5 years of this, I was like thinking, you know what? I said 8.5 years ago, this is going to be my last chance, American Girlfriend.
Mhm.
And so when it was time for me to pull the plug and said, fuck this, I started looking outside. But of course, this is probably within the 8th year. So I let her live with me for like another 6 months before I moved her out. Um, I wanted to find a woman that wasn't American, but I was still into Black women. And Africa was the last place on my mind. I never thought about it prior to breaking up with her until it was time for me to say, I deserve something better than this. So I search and search for special keywords on how to find or meet African women because nobody was talking about African women at all online, and we're talking 2005. So I got lucky after about 3 weeks, found a particular website called Afro Introductions out of Australia, which had a dating site called afrointroductions.com, which is part of Cupid. And there, I'd say 99% of everybody is from Africa looking either to date or get married or what have you. So you sign up for the gold membership because that's the only way you could talk to people. And that's where I ended up finding my wife, was through that website.
Okay, so let me. All right, okay, because you know me, Afro introductions. I mean, I did see these Afro site. It was some big old booties on there, but it wasn't like it's a cam site. What is Afro introductions about? Hold on a second. This Negro came in here talking about. I am not from Africa. None of my family are from Africa. So going to Africa is like me going to Spain. Nigga, didn't nobody ask you what the fuck you were going to? Shit your ass. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say the N word. Negro, somebody asked you what the fuck you was doing. Just shut your ass up. All right, John Powell. What is Afro Introductions about? I mean, is it like a campsite or what is it about?
No. It's strictly a place where you can meet, greet, and date, or end up getting married. I mean, it's not a place. I mean, if you want to show booty pics and all that, but the difference
Wait, did
between
you say booty pics?
you can if you want,
Okay.
but most African women don't show those types of photos on the profiles. Now, if you're knowing them for a while and for some reason you request it, they might do it, but due to their culture, they're usually not going to do stuff like that. It's totally different from American women that will show booty pictures all day long and don't think, put a second thought to it.
Mhm.
But basically, to answer your question here, is the reason why I wanted to reach out and kind of share this information is that not everybody is cracked up to go to Africa. Uh, most men, American men, in my opinion, are not suitable for African women for the simple fact that they don't have the mentality to handle a woman who knows how to respect herself and who's actually going to be feminine. They're used to the women who act like men, who parade themselves around the house as being the person who has to wear the pants in the family, even if they are the ones bringing the only income in, that they are the ones who are going to be the boss of the house. You're not going to get that in Africa. And so if you want a woman to be like a woman, you want that femininity into the household, a woman who's going to support her husband, that's the African culture. And so that's what I want to share. And for the men who do feel and know that they are ready for something like that, those are going to be the men that actually go there and will be able to become successful in meeting a woman to marry, or maybe even move there and live for the rest of their lives. That's why I share it. Why keep this information to myself and be selfish for it? I did think in the past, over the years, maybe I should keep my mouth shut, for the simple fact that what happens if I introduced an African woman to an American guy and he's going to be the worst person in her life? You know what I'm saying? I would feel bad about that. But I also had to think about myself again and think, Where was I before I got married? How miserable was I? You know, and I made it to the point where I was never gonna marry an American woman and just live like a MGTOW before I even knew what MGTOW was. So, therefore, I didn't wanna be selfish, and that is why I share things, whether if it's, you know, this is the type of jobs you can find over there, this is the type of women you can meet over there, this is what men do over there in day-to-day situations, this is what the politics are like over there. I had to share it.
Now, let me just be clear because I think somebody's misunderstanding you. You're not talking about like all American women or all American black women. 'Cause you dated both, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. What you're saying is that you wanted to go to Africa because you wanted to date women outside of America because you felt that it wasn't working out with American women particularly. What was it about American women that you thought that was different from African women?
Well, basically, I'm gonna put out the biggest one. When you marry an American woman, majority of the time, there's gonna be a divorce in this country,
Okay.
and it's usually within 20 years or less, and it's almost always because of the woman, even if there's nothing wrong in the relationship.
Okay.
Black or white, it doesn't matter. That is the biggest thing. I had to make that the biggest thing because marriage is a institution that's supposed to be for life. So with that alone, just that reason alone, I didn't need any other reason. Just that reason alone is the reason why, if I wanted that. But there's a lot more reasons, but that's the biggest one.
Biggest reason. Okay. Let me also ask you this though, because again, I always cite two people for because I was knowing about African history. I knew about post-colonial Uganda, post-colonial Kenya, post-colonial Nigeria. So I was kind of very aware of these things. But I got to cite two people who got me interested into really taking the initiative to go to Africa. One is Search for Uhuru, and the other was you. And because of people like you and Dynast, I'm actually organizing or helping organizing with NIE, the first Nigerian Independence Day party in my city. So my thing is, why are you, as a Caucasian man, one of your missions is to really, that I see, whether you know it or not, you're really trying to educate African Americans about African opportunities, about going to Africa. I've never seen you do this more so than any black person besides Dynast. Why are you so interested in helping African Americans establish themselves in Africa? Why do you do this?
Um, yeah, that's a hard question to answer. Actually, let me try to answer it in a couple different ways. One would be, I remember a hangout that I think it was about 2 years ago, Obsidian had, and you were probably in that. But I remember it was just all men on the panel. I remember somebody and everybody agreeing that, they're talking about the black community in America, that 80% ain't shit, 20% are, and the 80% should be uh, neutralized or something to that effect. They use some type of wording such as that. And so when they said that, I was listening to all the concerns and things of that nature. But out of that 20%, you're still going to have a lot of people who I would consider not ready to come to Africa, right? And they wouldn't be able to handle coming to Africa, because it's gonna be different culture.
Mhm.
It's going to have the same old arguments, the same old talking points, you sold us, and this and that and all that other stuff, right? So with that aside, there would always be the person who's ready for Africa, who wants to come and indulge in the culture and not to try to change people over there to be like them, but just to be accepted by Africa as who you are, because they judge you on your character, right? That is the person I want to help. And I don't care if you're white or black or anything, but I grew up in a black community. I'm mostly around black folks. So it's kind of more natural for me, I guess you can say, to lean towards helping more people in the black community than the white community. And then the other reason is, mainly is that I suffered over here. I could have put up with an American woman, but why? I mean, seriously, why try to spend all those hours and days and years looking for the right one when it's only about 2% of the total population that's worthy of marriage and that won't try to divorce you in 20 years or less.
Mhm.
When I go to the place where they have the highest quality of women, and over 90%, whether they're battered or not, who are married over there don't get divorces. So you think about it with my type of mentality and what I just said right there, what would you go for the 2% and take your chances where it's extremely high with high interest rates? Or would you go with the lower interest rates and go with the higher quality product, being that the culture really encourages people to get married, stick with their marriage, and have a happy family? Why stay over here and not go over there and do it?
Let me ask you this real quick, and let me just shout out some super chats. And guys, this is a really good show. Look the hell up, JPV, best place you've been in Africa. What you learned? Okay, I'll get to that. Thank you so much. Good night, world. Thank you for $5. Chuck E. Cheese scares. There's too many black women of low self-esteem. I like them, but they don't drama in my life. Let me do this real quick. Let's kind of get to the likes buttons, please. Let me ask you this, because a lot of people are going to say, okay, yeah, and thank you for helping me go to Africa. I've been to South Africa and Uganda. I can say primarily because of you in search for Uhuru, and I have enjoyed my time there. But you're going to have the people saying, and I cannot say they don't have a point. Hey, you're a white guy. You're showing up to Africa. When you get there, you're top dog. I mean, people are going to automatically gravitate towards you, and your experience is going to be different than African American experience or black person's experience as a man in Africa. Do you feel that when you go to Africa as a Caucasian that you have the advantage?
Yes and no. The advantages that I see over there for me is that I get attention right away. Not when I go to a restaurant though. When I go to a restaurant, I'm in line waiting behind 4 other people who are from there. I get help. I'm the 5th one to be helped. Okay. If there is no line and I'm the only one standing there, of course I'm going to be helped right away. The disadvantages that I get when I'm over there is if I go to a barbershop to get my hair cut, it's going to cost me usually 800 shillings instead of 300 shillings that the local Indian is going to get the same cut for. So yeah, there's advantages and disadvantages. I've heard a lot of people say, you know, white people this, white people that. The only people I see that happening to are some of the white people who deliberately flaunt their money or wear their money. Because I could be dressed in the same quality of clothing, you can say, that some people would in areas of Kenya. And again, the only advantage I see is some of the attention I get.
Okay.
But I don't see the advantages of any services that I get than anybody else.
Okay, let me ask you this then. Because I went to Uganda twice, and there's a story about this particular guy. I mean, I don't know how true it is, but I did read it. Guy who was a French guy. He won about a €1 million lottery, and he said he went to Ivory Coast, he went to Nigeria, he went to Togo. He impregnated over 600 African women. And so he says so many words that the African women, they have a predisposition towards white men. And I can say that I believe this. Like, when white guys show up in Africa, I feel, from what I've seen personally, they are top dogs. So if you're a white guy and you show up in Africa or Kenya or Uganda or a place like that, I mean, especially being from America, you're going to have a greater advantage over a guy like myself or somebody who's a African American guy, because you're white. What would you have to say about people who think like you're going to have advantage with the women because you are white and because they have a high respect for Caucasians, and especially the women? What do you say to those people who said that you're just pretty much kind of having your success because you're white?
They're not exactly correct, but they're not exactly incorrect either. Now, what I would have to say with that, the easiest one to say is you're going to have a lot of women over there. They don't care who they date. And some women their preference is only white guys, but they don't hate black men if they're into white guys only as far as dating or married. So that doesn't qualify them as being swirlers like you got over here.
Okay.
But then you also have some women that know that if you're coming from a foreign place and if you're white, that you're going to have more money because of the exchange rate usually. Now, if you're a foreigner and you're black and you don't let them know that you're a foreigner, they may not think of you. But as soon as they know that you're a foreigner, and they're after the money from the jump. They're coming after you. Okay, they're gonna come after you in some type of way, and they don't care if you're white or black. So I would say yes, correct and incorrect in that assessment when people are talking about those talking points.
Mhm.
Now, a long time ago, I think it was probably on your show that I remember some people saying, and even Afro American, not introductions, Afro American in Africa, the gal in Namibia, that she went to a hotel with her husband, who's Namibian, and they got secondary treatment over some white people at a hotel restaurant.
Okay.
And so I remember her, and I remember some hangout, like I said, I think it was yours, that some people were saying the same thing along those lines. And so what I said, and my wife agreed, is that when I do go back there and we have time, that we're going to plan out some experiences. Like we're going to go into a restaurant together type of thing, but we're going to act like we're not together. And we're going to go to different places where I'd be in front of the line or she'd be in front of the line and see who gets treated first and who gets treated better. And so, and actually mark down these experiences just to see how true it is, because a lot of people talk about it happening in Kenya, and I've tried to observe this behavior, which I have not seen as yet. But I'm willing to go ahead and put myself in that experiment when we have time to do it, and then let everybody know what we have found.
Mhm. Okay, let me ask you this, because you've been following me for a while. You got me to go to Africa. What have you experienced, like, as far as my change, since you were kind of influencing me as an African American living close to Poland to go to Africa, and I've been there twice since you've known me. What
Mhm.
changes have you seen in me and my content since I've been to Africa?
I've seen you, first of all, be a lot more proactive about the idea of people getting their passports and going to Africa and get the experience for yourself, because it's always good to get different point of views from other people before you go. Full circle actually went to Kenya based off of what I was talking about on Kenya, and I asked him. Well, I told him to get another person's um, experience, not just mine. Ask them the same questions you did me, but he didn't do that. He just went there, but he had a great time. Met a great contact there. The other things I've seen in you is that you give great information. Like, for example, when you went to South Africa and you're talking about the difference between the taxi and the Uber and how dangerous it is to possibly take an Uber as a hire than a taxi to hire to drive you around.
Mhm.
That type of information that is good, and you made it to where people I know were listening to you. Like, you were definitely interested in going to South Africa. You had a lot of great talking points, but I thought because you brought that particular topic up, that was more important than a lot of other topics that were kind of already known,
Mhm.
um, but maybe not emphasized. Because that same problem that's happening in South Africa is also happening in Kenya with the taxis and the Ubers. There's been some Uber drivers that have actually been beaten down because they're taking away some of the business, or it's unfair um, competition with Uber. So that's not just in South Africa. Um,
Mhm.
but anyways, the taxi cabs in Kenya, by the way, are cheap. So I really wouldn't. Now, if you're white, they're going to charge you a lot more. So sometimes my wife would have to hide me behind a plate glass window that you can't see through, negotiate a price, and then she pulls me out, and then they get pissed off, but there's nothing they could do. The deal's been done.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I've seen those changes in you, man. You bring out a lot of information. You bring your point of view as an African American to other African Americans, and that's what people need to hear. That's just what you're doing is no different than what Kaylin is doing on her YouTube channel
Mhm.
in Namibia. So yeah.
Yeah, she's an African American married to a Namibian guy, I believe. Right? Yeah, so she's a really good channel. Let me ask you this, because also I see you not only active and you contribute both financially and in moderating. I also see you, helping other African YouTubers like Wode Maya. I see you over there. Um, what do you think about people like him? I am Mara, guys who moved from Ghana to China, guys who moved from Kenya to other parts of the diaspora. What do you think about these guys who are trying to make themselves known on YouTube, stuff like that?
Um, well, I support them. I support them as long as they're doing something conducive to what it is that their goal is, and it's going to help people in a positive way, I support them. I actually didn't know about Wode Maya until some point through you. I think it's probably because I seen him in the chat or something like that.
Right.
But actually, I was chopping it up with him. I think it was this morning, and with a lot of other people. He had a lot of Chinese and Americans and a lot of other Africans. Chopping it up with them. Dr. Mumbi out of Kenya, she's another one I support as well.
Yeah. She was on the advice show, I believe.
Yeah, she was not too long ago. And actually, the lady Perez Owino, I know she was on the Advice show a couple months ago. He interviewed her, and that's the one I met in 2015 here in Portland, who made the documentary. If you all haven't seen it, it's called Bound, Africans versus African Americans. Everybody should watch that. You can see it on Amazon Prime Video, or you can rent it for like $3.99, I believe I saw yesterday on YouTube. So, yeah, I'm actually trying to get her and Impagi here in Portland to hook up.
Where is she from originally, this particular person?
She's from Kenya. She's been in the States for over 20 years. She's into film, and she co-produced that documentary with Isaiah Washington, by the way.
Okay, let me ask a question. Shout out to Dr. Deacon Eric P. The Chinese government has invested billions of dollars in Africa. Have you noticed JPV a Chinese influence in Africa?
Absolutely. The last time I was there was about 5 years ago. But this is what the thing is. If you're watching Kenya news, for example, and all the controversy happening with the mistreatment of Kenyans with the Chinese there lately due to discipline working on the railroad. Before that railroad was even built, because it took a little over 3 years to build it, way the Kenyan government has before Uhuru Kenyatta, who is the current president, majority of the workers building the roads and the railroad have to be Kenyan. Now, in a lot of other African countries, they'll make it 100% Chinese or just very little Africans. But in Kenya, it's the majority. Now, Chinese companies have a way of dishonoring their agreements.
Mm-hmm.
And now that the SGR, single gauge rail is what it's called, it's owned by the government, actually, it's not privately owned. They're building a second line from Nairobi to somewhere else. I think it's Nakuru, possibly.
Sure.
Since the regular operations, we have got actually trained engineers for that railroad and electricians that are pushing brooms who are Kenyan and being replaced by Chinese engineers. That was not the original agreement, but that's what's going on. And I do keep up on that information, and I go through the Kenya media network. I don't go through American or Chinese network, because Chinese is always about positive towards them. African networks will actually give you the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to the dealings. When something bad goes on, like on the SGR, where a Kenyan has to do 100 push-ups because they didn't do something right, and a Chinese guy does the same thing, he doesn't have to do any push-ups. There's a problem there. And this is not happening in China, because Wode Maya and Dr. Mumbi had a Chinese reporter who went to Africa to check out some of the Chinese operations there for CCTV, I believe it was. He was saying that they don't even do that here to China when somebody gets disciplined. They don't even do that on construction sites. So he said, what's going on? This is a Chinese man saying this. He says, what's going on there in Kenya, this is not what's going on in China as far as discipline. So
100 push-ups. Okay, let me do this. Guys, do me a favor. Like the video here. And for those of you who want to subscribe, you should subscribe to Junk Pile Video. Here's the channel here. All right, that's a channel right there. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell on the link, and there's this channel there in the description. Let me just talk about this as far as you being accepted. Now, what do people think when you're in Kenya and you're a white guy with an African woman and you're married to her? Like, do you get stares? What happens there?
Yeah, you get stares. First of all, people are just curious. Racism does not play a part over there. I've mentioned this many times in different conversations, that racism in Africa is foreign. So if there's going to be any racism coming into Africa, it's from an outside entity. It's not within. And here's the same thing with South Africans. South Africans really don't hate white people, but they hate the Afrikaans. Every time I've spoken to a Black South African in Oregon or Washington, it's always been the same story. And even interviews I've seen on TV or online with Black Africans in South Africa say the exact same thing. The Afrikaners never got to know the Africans. That is why they are hated. It's not because they're white. So America is extremely racist on both sides of the spectrum when you talk about black and white, but that is not what I see in Kenya unless somebody brings it in from another country. And so when they look at me, it's just me and my wife or anything like that. They're smiling or they're just curious. Some women are a little bit envious because they're like, well, where does she get him? I want somebody like him, this and that. It's that type of a thing. It's nothing else.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I forgot to mention this earlier. As far as people's experiences when the white man comes here and stuff like that, my wife has even told me that before she even spoke to, first white person in her life, she used to think that white people were better until she actually started talking to them. You see what I'm saying? She used to think that they were better until she actually started talking to them. And the reason why she didn't talk to them is not because they're like not coming up to her or anything like that. It's because she didn't engage. You know what I mean? Because, a lot of, especially the women are shy.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you engage them, they're going to be shy and they're not going to engage you unless it's some type of business setting, like, working at a resort or something of that nature. But when she started talking, she found out they're just like us. So that all those thoughts she had previous just went away. And I find that to be the exact same thing with a lot of other men and women that have said the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this, because
hold on. Tact. Listen to his wordage and that he's insinuating. Really, what am I insinuating?
What is he insinuating? You dumb. I mean, it's always a dumb motherfucker that come here talking shit. Let me hold on. JPV. Everybody knows I am not, for the most part, like, I don't date white chicks or anything like that. Okay, but listen, this dude is very honest and straight forthcoming. You know what I mean? I never hardly interview anybody white. I'll tell you that right now. But motherfucker, if you don't talk about listen to his wordage, what is he saying? I mean, who is this? Go ahead, JPV. I don't want to cuss his ass out. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Tax. If you really want to know, I told O'Shea in a background conversation, and this is a conversation between me and him over the phone. And basically, it had to do with one of his. And I wasn't on the interview. He was just talking about how he didn't like Africans coming to America and getting certain benefits and stuff like that.
Okay? And still
don't. Right? There were two Nigerians that were in the comment section towards the end that kind of cussed me out. Now, one of them knew me from over 12 years ago from a website called meetnigerians.com.net, whatever it is, that remembered who I was. Okay. And this is before I got married, and knew me when I got married and after that. And he says, why in the F are you hanging out with this guy? Knowing what goes on in Africa, us, but yet you're supporting him. I had to tell the guy, I said, hey, I grew up in the Black community over here, so I know where he's coming from. However, I would go and support you before I would anything American or anybody in America for that fact, if I had to choose. But I've seen changes in O'Shea, not just because of me, but because of other people and his experiences. He went to Africa and got a different experience. He's been hanging around more Africans in Poland and has gotten a different experience prior to that. After that. Prior to that, he didn't have those experiences, so that's why he was so negative. But if you know him now compared to then, you wouldn't be saying that. So I was cussed out, but that was somebody that recognized me without even seeing my face. Okay, yeah. Scary in a little way, but that's how this guy knew me, was from that website over 12 years ago. So if I'm insinuate that.
Let me also say this too, because even if, as me as an African American, if you go to Uganda and your Ugandan girlfriend introduces you to her friends, yeah, her friends are going to be butthurt because they're going to be asking, where did you get him from? So if you're Black I mean, obviously, it might make a little more difference if you're white, but if you're an American and your Ugandan girlfriend introduced you to her Ugandan friends or Kenyan friends, yeah, her friends are gonna try to fuck you. That's just what's gonna happen. So that's for some of you guys who've never been out of the country, but that's gonna happen. I'm just letting you know. Go ahead, bro. Go ahead. Go ahead, fam.
Well, yeah, that is true. That is true. But I just want to, I like to stick with the basics, Oshie. I don't know if you really noticed that about me. When I talk about Africa, I try to stick with the basics in terms of, I say all these great things. People have heard me say it over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Basics would be Africa is not for everybody. Kaylin says the same thing. And for the people who are really ready for Africa, Africa is ready for you.
Mm-hmm.
Point blank, period. Africa is ready for you. You will get the warmest of welcomes. Don't bring your baggage with you. Leave that at the airport. And O'Shea can tell you, it's not just me. O'Shea can tell you, Dynas has said this numerous of times in his videos, the type of welcomes that he gets, and he's not white. All right. So don't think it's a white thing or an Asian thing or an Indian thing, because it's not. It's how you conduct yourself. Basically, if you really want to be treated the way you like to be treated, that's the place to go and have that done. Because in America, you could be the nicest person in the world, and most of the time you can get a hello out of somebody, but you're going to get a lot of people shutting you down because they don't like nice people. They're not used to it.
Let me ask you this, right? Because I mean, cause I've dealt with chicks from Africa, right? But it seems like, I don't know, as a black guy, they always ask for fucking money. Like, they're always like trying to ask for money. I mean, I don't know about in your case, but when I was like in Uganda and you hook up one of these chicks or whatever, meet one of these chicks, like within like 35 seconds, like something goes wrong. Their 14th dad dies, or 75th grandfather dad dies, like in the fucking 30 minutes. It's like, yo, I need money. Oh my God, I'm having a bad day. Somebody stole my phone. Like, did you go through these kind of hustles and shit through with some chicks on this particular website?
Yes, I have. There is a difference after you get married. I'm going to tell you that. Because when you wear the ring on your finger, you're not going to get these women who hang around you, whether it's in a restaurant setting or a friend or what have you, to ask you those types of things. But when you don't have that ring, you're going to get a lot more of those questions. And that's even prior when you're on the internet. So even when I was talking to different women on Afro introductions, some women, because a lot of women there, they get their time wasted by men who never show up when they say they're going to show up and things like that. They try to get something out of it. And so they try to get a little hustle out of it. So the same things will be asked online sometimes, but more so in person than it would be online. So yes, that does happen. And I would have to say, just like a few other people have said, it's developing countries, you're probably going to run into that more. But you might as well say that happens here a lot too, because over there, at least they let you know up front. Where here, you wait till you get behind closed doors of a taxi cab or your apartment or her apartment. Then all of a sudden she's like, will you pay my cable bill? Will you pay this and that because this happened and that happened? And the price gets a lot higher. And so that's the biggest difference I see between here and there when it comes to that.
Okay. So let me do this, guys. And like the videos. JPV, it's like almost 5:15 in the morning. So here, and I'm like, running a little bit of steam. So I don't know. I mean, is there any other things that you wanted to before? Because we'll do a part 2 of this. But are there any other things that you wanted to talk about? As far as because definitely I think this deserves a part 2. But the show I had was simple. It was over 4 hours. So. Right. I apologize, but what are the things you think that Black people need to really be interested in going to Africa? What opportunities do you think that you see there?
Well, as far as opportunities, the biggest opportunities are going to be business opportunities rather than job related opportunities.
Yes.
And if you're going to go there as a business entrepreneur, you're definitely going to have to go there first 1 or 2 times, make some contacts initially. Don't ever expect to go there your first time and start doing business. That's the wrong thing to do. Anybody in Africa would tell you that. Anybody that's been to Africa would tell you that. Now, as far as the employment sector, some of the best jobs you're going to get, if you're going to get jobs, is going to be with the universities. some type of NGO, which is non-governmental organization, or 501c3 as we call it here. Those would be the type of jobs, it'd be teaching English, or if you're into some type of farming, agricultural degree, you could go there for stuff like that. But mainly, if you're there for business, you go there a couple times, make your contacts, make a plan on what type of business you're going to get into. Because one thing I have noticed over there is that if you try to go over there with a fresh idea that they haven't thought of before, it's probably not going to take off. The reason why I say that, first, you got to look at a country and what their needs are. And if you can accommodate what their needs are and then make an improvement on it, then you can start coming up with new ideas like, nobody's ever tried this over here before. First, you want to establish yourself with something that works. Mm-hmm. And once you could do that, then you can start branching off. But definitely go there first and get some contacts, and then take a lot of advice from people that's already been over there. A lot of advice.
And I think that is very, 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 very important, guys. And also, Junk Pal, we'll come back with the part 2. I'm just dozing off and shit right now. But shout out to Robert Morris. Shout out to people that subscribe. JPV, when can we come you back on for part 2, brother?
Probably next week, Saturday or after.
All right. So next week, Saturday, guys, we'll do part 2. And I apologize, man, but it's like almost 5 in the morning. And I'm like, I was trying to do the British stream today. I missed it, but we'll do it next time. I do thank you for shedding your light on this. And I do want to personally thank you as a Caucasian person, getting me to get my yellow fever card and go to Africa, because it's opened up my whole content. I was talking more about Africa instead of talking to Africa. You know what I mean? Right. And I think that you met a person that I just interviewed that was in your city. That was really good of you. I appreciate you for meeting up with the person. But now I think what I'm doing now, because of you and Dynus, is I'm talking not about Africa all the time, but I'm talking to people. I'm talking to Africans. I'm listening to Africans. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to build a relationship with Africa instead of talking shit about Africa.
I heard that.
Which I still do talk shit about Africa, but
you do it more in a sarcasm, approach nowadays, so.
Yeah, and guys, and it just goes to show you that a person always doesn't have to be necessarily black to inspire you. And I think that's what we think of, because I can honestly tell you that this guy was putting up videos about Dar es Salaam, the train stations being built there. This is Africa. If you look at Junk Pal's videos, you'll see a lot of stuff about, no, this is really what Africa is about. And, a lot of people think like, oh, Africa, people are just a lot of lions over there, people swinging on trees. But, stuff like what Dynasty Samir, I met him personally from my city, but stuff that you were doing was showing me like, oh, wow, there is opportunity. Oh, wow, there is things that we should be doing. Oh, wow. We need to really be, trying to get in touch with other people from the diaspora. And I can honestly say that one of the 2 reasons that I actually wanted to have a relationship was, it wasn't a black person that taught me about it, but a white person that was telling me, no, this is really what Africa is about. This is why you need to build a relationship with Africa. And I honestly can say I thank you for that, because a lot of African Americans, or a lot of Africans either, you actually help bridge that gap. So I can actually talk to Africans about their experience and not take it so personal, not be so tribalistic about it. I've actually interviewed one Ugandan guy, which you met. I interviewed another Nigerian guy. And even the Negro Manosphere, we have guys from Nigeria that write for us,
right.
We have the Nigerian Independence Day party we're planning. So I thank you a lot for your inspiration. Also, Search for Huru. So hold on, Comic Codes. Thank you, Mr. White Man, for explaining to me to your appointments to African men how they worship you. Thank you for teaching me. Is that what I'm saying? I don't think I'm saying that, bitch, motherfucker. What I'm telling him is that if it wasn't for him, hardly, I probably wouldn't be interested in going also another person. So why you want to be here trolling? Get his ass out of the motherfucking chat with your stupid ass.
You know what?
Get him out of here. Get him out of here. Get him out of here, motherfucker. Go ahead.
A comment like that, you really got to think of it like this. If you caught a flight to somewhere, I don't care if it's to Africa or Russia or to New York. If you didn't see the pilot when you got on the plane, who the fuck cares who the pilot is?
Right. That's true.
They can land you in New York, Africa, or Russia, That's what you really care about, and I know you care about it, so saying something stupid like that only makes you look like a fool, and you'll always think like a fool when you say some shit like that.
Yeah, no, and that's true. And I can honestly say that, the content has evolved for me, and me who's only interested in black women. I mean, man, going to Uganda, golly, it's fucking great. But I mean, just in closing, man, anything else that you want to tell people before we get up out of here?
Yes, and I'll keep saying it, is that anybody and everybody, and women included, if you want to get the experience of whether if you romanticize about Africa or not, if you want to get the experience of Africa or anywhere else for that matter, Barbados, doesn't matter. You have to get your passport. Don't be afraid to go and apply for a passport at the post office. It's going to cost you a little bit of money. It doesn't take that long to get. And as long as you don't have a really bad felony record, you legally can get that. If you have a really bad felony record, you're not going to be able to get it, unfortunately, in most cases. So when I'm saying that this is the majority of the people don't have felony records, go get it, get the experience, come back, tell your story, and then go back again wherever it is that changed your life. Because a lot of times when you experience one place, like O'Shea has said himself, and even I've said it in the past, Dinas has said it, and even Kaylin in Namibia has said it, it changed our lives when we went over to Africa. And that never would have been possible if we did not get up off our ass and get our passport. So you might as well get your passport anyway, because I think it's 2020. We're all going to have passports in this country according to the way the law is working right now, just to fly state to state. So you might as well go before the lines get too big. So that's what I wanted to say.
All right, guys. And I really do thank you, JP, for coming on. Guys, I'll see you in a few hours. Again, thanks for the show, man. It was a great show. And we'll see you guys next week. Make sure you sub to Junk Pile Video. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. I got 2 streams. And thanks again, JPV.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.